everybody, my name is Mars, you can call me MG if you would like, and today I have for you my top 25 books that I read in 2025. This was a very hard list for me to put together because I just had so many books that I enjoyed, so this is honestly kind of an incomplete list because there were so much more than 25 that I wanted to talk about, but I had to cap it somewhere, and 25 for 2025 just made sense. So this is kind of just the top 25 at the time that I made the list, but just know that there were so many that just barely missed the cutoff. Also, the placement is kind of arbitrary. I mean, like, my top, 3 to 5 are very solidly, like, my top books of the year, but further down the list we get, the less solid they are in the specific number. I just had to put these books in some sort of an order, and this is how they ended up. So, with 25 books to get through, that is a lot. Let's just get started. So, starting off in spot number 25, we have Dear Mothman by Robin Gao, and this is a middle grade book that I read for the Summer Scare readathon, and it is so cute. It's told in verse, which I thought was very well done, and it follows a trans boy who is in, I believe, 6th grade, and unfortunately, he experiences the tragic death of his best friend, who is also the only other trans boy that he knows, and in his grief, he starts writing letters to Mothman because that was his best friend's favorite cryptid, and it was just so beautifully done. I really had a good time with this, and also it's one of the most stunning covers I've ever seen in my life. I really love the colors on it. Book number 24 is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and this is kind of a weird one. I read this back in August, I believe, as part of my Leigh Bardugo author taste test vlog to see if I enjoyed Leigh Bardugo as a writer because I had never read from her before. And during my time actually reading this book, I could not tell if I was loving it or hating it. Like, it was so wild. And then I got to the end and I was like, actually, I think I'm obsessed. The vibes are just so wild, but also, like, exactly what I love in books. And then I immediately checked out Hellbent from the library, but it took me a couple of months to get to, and I also did really enjoy Hellbent. And then I somehow missed this for like a month and a half, but apparently at the end of October, the third book was finally announced, and it's called Deadbeat. It's coming out next year, I think in the fall, but I'm not positive on that. But like, I don't know how I didn't see that announcement like when it was first made because I'm like obsessed with these first 2 books in the series, and I'm so excited for book number 3. I don't know if it will be the last book in the series. I think this was originally meant to be like a super long series, like 12 or more books, and then it got cut down to like 5 or 6, and then it might have gotten cut down again to only be a trilogy, but I don't actually know. So I guess we will see when the third book comes out next year if it is the conclusion of a series or not, but I'm just so excited for that. In spot 23, we have Backhanded Compliments by Katie Chandler. Katie is a very dear friend of mine, and this is her debut novel, and it was so fun. This is not my usual vibe. I don't often enjoy contemporary romance, but I think because it had this, like, element of non-contemporariness, there's definitely a better way to say that, but it has, like, soulmates in it, and I think that with that tiny little added element to it, it really made it work for me, and I love the discussion around soulmates that we have in this book. I thought that was so interesting, and I'm excited to explore that more in future installments. There is another book set in the same world coming out in 2026. It follows the sister of Juliet, who is one of the characters we're following here, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. But yeah, this was a book that I knew I would enjoy because I've read some of Katie's other projects that she's worked on over the years, and I knew that her writing style worked very well for me, but I wasn't so sure about the content of it, but I still had a really good time despite it not being my usual thing. For book 22, we have a very highly anticipated new release that I was just itching to get to because it had so much going for it that I was excited for, and that was Break Wide the Sea by Sarah Holland. Another book with an absolutely stunning cover. This might be my favorite cover out of every single book that I read this year because I'm truly just obsessed with it. But this book was so good. It was so close to being like a perfect 10 out of 10 for me. Like it just barely missed the mark because of like a couple of little details that I wasn't fond of. But essentially, our main character, Annie, is the heir to this whaling company that hunts magical whales. And these whales, like their blubber and their blood and their bones, have these magical properties that help the people of this town that Annie is from kind of survive the really harsh, nearly Arctic climate that they live in. And she is suffering from a curse that is slowly turning her into a monster. And in an attempt to kind of figure out if she can break this curse, she goes on this sea adventure with her fiance, whom she is starting to lose trust in, and also this other boy who she knew as a child, and he's like rumored to have this like sea fae blood and kind of have like a weird history with him. And like it was just so good. And the cliffhanger that it ended off on, like guys, I read this book like the day it came out. And when I tell you that I was so mad when I got to that cliffhanger at the end and realized that I have to wait like an entire year for the second book in the duology to come out to find out what happens. I was so mad at myself for reading it like immediately when it released, but also like I was so highly anticipating this that I could not wait any longer. So I am so glad that it did not disappoint. In the 21st spot, we have The Otherwhere Post by Emily J. Taylor. This was a really fun one. I actually, earlier this year, was talking to some friends, and I was like, ugh, we always have like cozy fantasy set in cafes or bookshops and libraries. What about the cozy fantasy post office? Where's that kind of book? And then literally less than 24 hours later, I saw Q from the channel QWERTY talk about this book and how it has like a magical post office element to it, and I was like, perfect, great timing. So as soon as it came out, I requested a copy from the library and I read it, and I really loved it. I thought this was so fun. I can see myself returning to this to reread it in the future, which I don't do a ton for standalones unless they're like absolute top of the list favorites, but like this one I enjoyed enough that like I want to revisit these characters and this world. Like it was such a good time. Book number 20 is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee, a dark academia book that I'm actually using as a comp title for my own current dark academia project, Quite Contrary. But A Lesson in Vengeance was so good. It had like these witchy kind of elements to it that I thought were so well done that like it was kind of ambiguous as to whether or not the witchy paranormal things were actually real or not. I thought that was well crafted. It also had like a toxic sapphic relationship. Such a fun time. I really enjoyed this. I definitely want to read more from this author, and I also will be rereading this book at some point as a comp title because I didn't go into it knowing it would be a comp title for my project, but now knowing what I do, I want to reread it to kind of like intentionally pull some elements from it into my own story. In spot 19, we have The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. I also read her other book, which is The Keeper of Magical Things, and I did enjoy that, just not as much as I enjoyed The Teller of Small Fortunes. This just delivered on both the high fantasy end and also the cozy fantasy end of things. I don't know how it managed that balance so well, but like reading this felt like curling up in my chair with a hot cup of tea and like having a grand old time. It was so good. It kind of made me feel the same way reading Lord of the Rings does, which like I don't want to compare it to Lord of the Rings. They are vastly different stories, but it gave me the same feelings inside of like high fantasy adventure with stakes, but also something so sweet and cozy and enjoyable to me. So yeah, definitely really loved this, and I'm excited for any more books that she puts out. My 18th book on my list of my top 25 is The Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This was a surprise to me. I never read this in school, which a lot of people do. Like, I think my sister ended up reading it 2 different years in her English classes. I never did, not in middle school, high school, college, any of it somehow. But I bought this, I think, I either bought it at like a yard sale or I got it in a little free library or something a year or so ago. And I was like, you know what? I'm finally gonna read it, and I loved it. Like, this is what I want out of my classics. I really had a good time with this, and I can't even like accurately describe why. I know so many people don't like this book, but the things that I've seen people complain about this book are kind of the reasons why I really enjoyed it, so I'm glad that this worked for me. I'm sad that it doesn't work for other people as much as it did for me, but definitely one of my favorite classics and one that I will be rereading in the future. And speaking of books that didn't really work for other people but work very well for me, number 17 is Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. This, I feel like, disappointed a lot of people. I mean, it's so different from If We Were Villains. It took 7 years from ML Rio's first book to this one coming out. It's so short. A lot of people were like, disappointed just in that element, but then also didn't enjoy the story itself. But I had a really good time with this. It's so creepy and gross and weird that it was right up my alley. Also, a lot of people don't like this cover, but I love it. I love a gross cover on a horror novel, and the lime green writing is just so bright and fun. And yeah, this worked for me. Again, a lot of things people were saying they didn't like about it are things that I did like about it. So, yeah, very glad that I enjoyed this. I did recently pick up Hot Wax, which is Emil Rio's latest release and a full-length novel, and I didn't enjoy it. I ended up DNFing it. So, I'm glad I still have this, and I did enjoy If We Were Villains, but I think I like Graveyard Shift even more than that, which is a very unpopular opinion. In spot 16, we have God Killer by Hannah Kaner. This I read on the recommendation of my friend Violet. She read it and was like, this is exactly the kind of book you would like, and she was right. It was so good. I really like how all of the different characters' viewpoints played off of each other. It has disability rep, which we know I love. I really enjoyed the aspect of the gods in this world and the way that they work. I thought that was very unique and fun. I did read book 2 as well. I didn't like it as much as book 1, but I did still enjoy it, and I'm so excited to read book 3 and finish out this trilogy. I've heard that it finishes strong. I read both the first and second book physically while listening to the audiobook, so I'm hoping I can get that done for book 3 as well, and that it will not disappoint. I'm so excited for it. Book 15 is Heavenly Tyrant by Shirin J. Zhao, the long-awaited sequel to Iron Widow. And if you've read Iron Widow, then you know that the last chapter or the epilogue or whatever it is kind of is a huge twist and opens up the world in a really weird way, but then the book ends, so you don't really know the implications of it. And this book explores those implications, and I really like how it was done. I enjoy the character work in this. I enjoy all the different sci-fi elements that we expand upon from the first book, but also some new things that we see in this one. The cover is very beautiful. It does open the series up for a third book, which people weren't expecting. I think everyone was expecting Iron Widow to be a duology, but it will be at least a trilogy. Don't know if there will be more books beyond that, but I'm so excited. I know we're not going to get it for so long because Sharon J. Zhao is admittedly a very slow writer. They talk all the time about how they can't put out like a book every single year the way a lot of authors do. That's just not their writing style. And you know what? I understand. Take all the time you need. But like I really want book 3. I need to know what happens. It's just so good. This is a series that I know people are very split on, but for me personally, I think it is maybe one of my favorite series of all time. Like maybe top 15? I don't know. I haven't actually thought about that. Let me know if in the future you want a list of my top favorite series of all time, because I feel like my reading in the past year or two has drastically changed that list from what it would have been at the beginning of my booktube career. But yeah, definitely on that list. The 14th book on my list is another classic that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I did, and that is The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I was really worried going into this because I have a thing with bugs. I genuinely am absolutely terrified of bugs. It's like a legitimate phobia of mine. And so I was like, maybe a story about a man who turns into a giant bug is not for me, but I'm gonna give it a shot. And I actually really enjoyed it. I like how there are so many different ways to interpret it, like allegorically. Personally, the way I read it, it feels very much like a story about a person who suddenly becomes disabled and has to be cared for by the people around them. And it feels very accurate to say that that is a reading of it. But yeah, I actually really liked this. The bug stuff was very gross, but not as gross as I expected it to be, which is great. It still skeeved me out a lot, but I was able to get through it, and I really enjoyed this one. Next up in spot 13, we have Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker, and I adored this book. Like 10 out of 10, so good. I really love the horror elements and the paranormal aspect of it. It's very gross and gory, but not in a gratuitous way. I love body horror and gore and blood and guts and all that, but I don't like when it's blood and guts for the sake of grossing out the audience. I this sounds so ridiculous, but I want there to be a purpose to the gore, and there definitely was in this book. I mean, our main character is a crime scene cleanup person. Like that's her job is she cleans up after dead bodies have been removed from gruesome crime scenes. And I really loved this book. I had like no intentions of reading it, like it was something like on my radar, but I just happened to be at the library and that their copy had just been returned, and so it was on the shelf there, and I was like, yeah, I'll take that home with me, and I really enjoyed it. Spot number 12 belongs to The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, another classic. This list is very classic heavy. Like, it's obviously not all classics, but a lot more classics than I expected. I didn't really realize I had read that many until I went to make this list. But The Outsiders is a book that I read for the Nostalgia Train book club, and I do think I would have gotten a little bit more out of it had I read it as a teenager, as the intended audience. If you didn't know, The Outsiders is considered to be the first YA novel, and I definitely would have gotten a lot out of it as a teenager, but even now, as a 27-year-old, I really do see the merit in it, and I had a very, saying good time reading it is kind of weird because a lot of sad things happened, but like, it was a very well crafted book, and I enjoyed the reading experience. I do want to watch the movie at some point. Also, there is a production of the play adaptation happening next year in, I think, the spring. I believe it's at the Academy of Music, if I'm not wrong. I don't know. I'm like loosely following several different theaters in Philly to see what shows they're going to be putting on next year, because this is the year that I got back into watching live theater, both plays and musicals. And I do remember seeing The Outsiders on one of those venues list of shows, and I do definitely want to go see that. I think that would be an amazing time. In the 11th spot on my list, we have Incarnate's Rise by Crystal Kiesler. Crystal is one of my best friends. I did the copy edits on this book. Yes, there are a few errors in it, but I find errors in like traditionally published books all the time, so like it's fine, it happens. It just stings a little bit knowing that I was the editor on this and I missed a couple of things, but it's fine. Everything's fine. This book is so good. It's another genre that I don't normally read, but for some reason it works for me here, just like with my other friends' book. Maybe it's just because they're my friends' books and that is like an element of it, but this is a urban fantasy paranormal book with like vampires and werewolves and magic, and it's so fun. Like, I literally read this book 3 times over the course of the last 12 months as like an editor, and I was still so eager to pick this up and read the finished copy when it came in, just because it is so good and I enjoy it so much. If you are a fan of Underworld or Blade or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that kind of like late 90s, early 2000s kind of vibe of paranormal urban fantasy, this is your book. Like, it delivers on the same vibes as those movies and shows so well, and it's the first in a series, so there will be more to come, and I cannot wait to get to read those. And now we have made it to our top 10, and in spot number 10, we have Dreams Lie Beneath by Rebecca Ross. Rebecca Ross has become one of my favorite authors. I did not read a single book by her until last December. So it's literally only been a year of me reading her books, and now I've read every single one except for one of them. I have not read Sisters of Sword and Song? Is that what it's called? I don't know. I have one book from her backlist left to read, and I will get to it, but I just didn't get to it this year. But yeah, I love Rebecca Ross. The only books of hers that I've read and didn't enjoy was the Queen's Rising duology, the Queen's Rising. Oh my god, I've been filming for so long that I'm losing my words. The Queen's Rising and the Queen's Resistance, I was not a fan of. They weren't bad by any means, but they just felt so bland, especially compared to all of her other books. And Dreams Lie Beneath was so good. We have nightmares come to life. We've got a not a curse. I mean, there is a curse. That's why the nightmares come to life, but not the aspect I'm talking about. Like a character whose heart is turned to stone in order to like preserve magic, so she can't fall in love. We've got twin characters, which I love. I love books about twins. If you didn't know, I am a twin, and so I love reading about twins. And it's so good. It's an amazing book. I read this as a buddy read with a few of my friends, and I loved talking about it with them. In the ninth place spot, we have Grave Mercy by Robin Lefevers. I did not expect to love this as much as I did. This is historical fantasy, which is one of my favorite genres. I think historical fantasy and portal fantasy are tied for my favorite subgenres of fantasy, and fantasy is my favorite genre of all time. So I've been reading a lot of historical fantasy in the past year or two, and this was so different. It takes place in the 1500s in Brittany, the region of France, which a lot of historical fantasy, at least what I've been reading, is like Victorian era or like Edwardian England. I've read some that takes place in the US in like the late 1800s, early 1900s. So it kind of gets a little bit repetitive reading all books from the same era, but this was so different. I enjoy the fantastical elements with the god of death, and I'm so excited to read the other two. These are also kind of romantasy books, and each of the 3 books in the trilogy follows a different girl, and so we've met the other 2 girls who we will be following in books 2 and 3, and I'm so excited to read their stories. But I like the God Killer series, read this physically with the audiobook going, so I would like to do that again, and I just have to time it right so that I can check out the physical book and the audiobook from my library at the same time, because this one, I own it, I just had to get the audiobook. It's a little bit trickier when you have to get 2 different formats from the library. Next up in the 8th place spot is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig, another book that I buddy read. This one I buddy read with my friend Anna, and we both had such a great time with this. I actually checked this out from the library, and then like a couple of weeks later I was like, I'm still thinking about this, I need to read book 2. So I did read book 2, and about halfway through I found myself at a bookshop, and I was like, I might as well buy these books because I'm loving them so much, so that's why I own it physically, and I also own book 2. This is just so amazing. I love the dark gothic atmosphere. I love that we have a few different types of magic. So we've got this like magical plague going on. We've got these providence cards that give magic. We've also got the magic that the plague kills people, but if you survive the plague, you end up with magic, and I really like that element of it. And there is a romance in this book, but I wouldn't call this a romantasy. I would just call it a fantasy romance. It's a fantasy book with a romance subplot, and I really love our two halves of the couple together. I think the way they come together is so well done, and I just really enjoyed this in a way that I didn't expect to. I thought I would like it, and I loved it. Next up, we have a book by an author we've already talked about, who's already made an appearance on this list. So, in my 7th place spot, we have Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I told you that she has very quickly become one of my favorite authors. I adore this duology. I actually didn't own this book until literally yesterday because I got it for Christmas. I got the duology. It's so good, you guys. I'm just like, I needed to own it. I needed to own it physically. I didn't own any Rebecca Ross books despite reading almost all of her backlist, so I asked for Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows for Christmas, and my grandmother got them for me. A lot of people didn't enjoy this one as much as they enjoyed the first one. Like, people, from what I saw, enjoyed it but didn't love it the way they loved Divine Rivals. And again, I'm an outlier in that I literally only have one complaint about this book, and that it is there is a certain character I would have liked to see a little bit more often. Like if they showed up in like 2 or 3 more chapters. And that's my only complaint. Other than that, this book is literally perfect. Like, I loved Divine Rivals. I think I ended up putting it as my number one read of 2024. And the fact that this one made the top 10, like, it is an S tier series. So good. Rebecca Ross, I will read anything she writes. I still have to read that one book, but also anything else she writes in the future, immediately in my hands because she just does things so well. Like, I don't understand. This is the kind of book where I read it and I'm like, well, I might as well never write again because how could I ever be this good? Which is a little bit sad, but also like, it's just so good, you guys. Ah. My 6th favorite read of 2025 is A Day of Fall and Night by Samantha Shannon. This big boy, I actually liked this more than Priory of the Orange Tree, which I did really enjoy. I read that a few years ago, and it's like an 800-page book, and I read it in like 4 or 5 days because I was just glued to it. This, I like a little bit more. I just think I connect to the characters more. I read this, as I did with many other books, physically while I had the audiobook going, and that has really worked well for me this year. It's something I definitely want to take into the new year with me and do that for more books if I can. But yeah, this was just so well crafted. Again, it's one of those books where there's a lot of different little plot lines, and just being able to see how they're all coming together and like being able to handle all of these different characters and plots and backstories and elements of the world and like piecing them together in a way that makes sense and having them come together in this like big climax at the end. It's just Samantha Shannon is a master of her craft. It's so well written. And I do still have to read Among the Burning Flowers. I want to read that and then reread Priory of the Orange Tree, like if not immediately after, then like very soon after. I just haven't had the time to work that into my reading, so hopefully in 2026 I can do that, and then maybe we'll have that on my list of favorite books in 2026 because Samantha Shannon definitely deserves to be on this list any year that I read one of her books. I do have to read her other series, the Bone Season, I think. I think that's what it's called. I really want to get my hands on it because of how much I loved Priory and A Day of Fall and Night. In my 5th place spot, we are cheating a little bit. I have 3 books here. They're all books from the same series, but I read them so close together that they kind of all merged in my head. But we have the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th books in the Wax and Wayne series. So we've got Shadows of Self, Bands of Mourning, which is the one that I own physically out of the 3, and The Lost Metal. This is probably my favorite series of all time, if I'm being entirely honest. I read book one last year in 2024. Absolutely loved it. Don't know why I didn't continue on immediately. But then earlier this year in the spring, I read Shadows of Self and immediately had to pick up Bands of Mourning. Like I needed it. I had to wait a little bit because I had other reading priorities, but the second I had some reading time open up, I went and checked the stuff in the library and read it. And then the same thing with The Lost Metal. I had to read a couple of other books for like book clubs and things, different priorities, but then I got to The Lost Metal as soon as possible and it did not disappoint. Such a great series. I know that everyone rants and raves about the original Mistborn trilogy, and I do love those books, but Wax and Wayne just hits my brain in a way that like nothing else ever has or ever will, I think. It's just so good. I feel like I'm like repeating myself with this whole list of me being like, these books are so good, but like it is my top reads of 2025 list. So obviously these books are so good. But yeah, really, really happy to have read this series. Now I just have to go and read the rest of the Cosmere, which is a lot. Book four in my list of my favorite reads is A Power Unbound by Freya Marski. This is the third and final book in the Last Binding series, and it's another historical fantasy. We've already established that I love that genre. This is also a romantasy and queer on top of that. So this is a three-book series, and each one follows a different couple, but they're like intertwined along the same overarching plot line. And the first book I did really enjoy. Edwin and Robin, amazing couple. I love them so much. The second book, not my favorite in terms of the romance. It just felt quite rushed. It follows the sister of one of the guys from the first book and her female love interest, so it's sapphic. And then the third book follows the ex situationship of one of the couple from the first book, and also a character that we meet in the second book. And the dynamic between them is everything that I want in a couple. Like, it's so good, you guys. Madison, if you're watching this, keep recommending me books, because Madison is also the one who got me into Rebecca Ross. I will trust any book she ever recommends me. I think there's been like one book she's recommended me that I didn't enjoy, and I can't even remember what it was because she just keeps recommending banger after banger. So good. But yeah, I love the romance in this one. They're my favorite couple out of the trilogy, but also I really love the way the overarching non-romance plot line, the like fantasy aspect of it comes to a close. It's just such a satisfying ending, and it's the ending I feel like it deserves. Also, are there twins in this book? Is the main character a twin? I think one of the guys is a twin, now that I'm thinking about it. At least a sibling, which I do like siblings in books in general, but I just like twins the most. But yeah, this was just a phenomenal ending to the trilogy, and I'm sad that there's not more, but happy with the way things ended. We have now made it to the top three, and I'm so happy because my throat is starting to hurt, but I'm like in the home stretch now. I gotta talk about these books, but my number three book, my third favorite read of the entire year, is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire, with honorable mention to the next few books in the series because I have read, I think, 2, 3, and 4 as well, and also really, really enjoyed those, and I cannot wait to continue on. But this is Portal Fantasy, which I haven't read a ton of this year, but I did mention how that is also one of my favorite fantasy subgenres. It's so good. If you don't know what the series is about, it's basically children who fall into portal worlds and then fall back to Earth and can't adjust to their regular life, so they go to stay at this home for wayward children, which is like they're all children who can't adjust back to their regular life. And there's adventures into these different portal worlds. There's a lot of queer rep and mental health rep, and they're so short. They're a series of novellas, and the fact that Seanan is able to pack so much character work into such a short book in each and every installment is just amazing. It's another one of those books where I'm like, why do I even bother trying to write if I'm never gonna be like this? Truly, I think I cried at every installment that I read from the series this year. So, I mean, I do cry a lot. I'm a very emotional crier. Like, I will cry if I experience an excess of literally any emotion. But yeah, I love this series, and there's so many more to come, and I cannot wait to read the rest of them. The runner-up, book number 2 on my list of my favorite books that I read in 2025, is another classic, and it is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for a while, and I just never did, and finally I was just like, I literally can just check it out from the library and read it. So I did, and I loved it. This is a dystopian. It follows a man and his son at the end of the world as they travel along the road, and it's also written in a very strange way. Like, there's not a lot of punctuation, there's no quote marks around dialogue and stuff like that. So it's a little bit jarring to get into, but it's so good. Like, I'm trying to think of other words to use, but like, that's really it. It's like, it's just a really good book. It's very simple in its like descriptions and things, and I think the writing style plays into that because that's really all you need to get the story across. And I don't want to like give details about what happens because spoilers. I just think this is a very profound and impactful work that I want more people to read, and I really enjoyed it, so this is me recommending it to you guys. Okay, now quickly before my voice gives out, we have my top read of 2025, my absolute favorite book that I read this year. This is a book that I read in January, and I've thought about it every single day since then. So like the entire year I've constantly been thinking about this book, and that is This Is Not a Test by Courtney Summers. This is a zombie book. If you didn't know, zombies are my favorite like monster creature thing. I love zombies. I love zombie stories. And this was just such a great exploration of mental health. Like, the zombies in it were cool, but it was the character work that really did it for me and why I can't stop thinking about this book. It does have a short novella sequel that I have not been able to get my hands on, but randomly I found out that this upcoming January, literally just a few weeks from now, there's going to be like a special edition of this book being published with the novella sequel for the first time ever in print in the back of that book. I'm obviously going to buy myself a copy. I just I've been thinking about this book so much where several times throughout the year I was like, should I just reread this now even though it's literally been such a short time? That doesn't happen. I'm a very big rereader, but usually when I reread things, it'll be like a year or more after the first time I read it, or like the most recent time I read it. But this book, and also this happened with Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, like the minute I finished reading them, I was like, I want to read that again right now. So, rereads of the Letters of Enchantment duology happening soon, and also rereading This Is Not a Test, because this just is one of those books that is going to stick with me forever. Like, I already know it, and so I need to implant it directly into my brain as much as I can. Okay, friends, we've made it! We've finally gotten through the end of the video. Thank you so much for being here. I apologize if my voice sounds noticeably worse now than it did at the beginning of filming. I've been talking to this camera for way, way, way too long. I'm definitely going to rest my voice after this, but thank you for watching. Let me know down in the comments what the best books you read this year were, what your absolute favorites were. I would love to be recommended them. Also, if you've read any of these books, share your thoughts on that because I would love to gush about them with you guys. We have now come to the end of the video. If you've enjoyed it, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.